In order to complete this worksheet, you really just need to know what all of these variables stand for when we concern ourselves with interest. So, A is just kind of what you're solving for. It's the amount you end up with. Whereas P is something called the principal. It's what you deposited, all right? So P is the principal, and it is the initial deposit, okay? R, of course, stands for rate. Now, it's often written as a percent, but when you enter it into the formula, you have to write it as a decimal. So write as a decimal. And then finally, T is time, but this is very important. It's time that is done in years. So if they told you that something sat in an account for 18 months, you would need to convert that into years, 1.5 years. You'll be able to do this entire section easily. The next part deals with compound interest, and we're going to need to know what one additional variable stands for. The difference between this crazy formula and the last one is this tiny little n that is up here. N stands for the number of compoundings per year. Compoundings per year. And this just means that instead of waiting until the end of the year to add the interest onto your account, such as it says using simple interest, a $100 deposit earning 10%, so 10% of 100 is 10, it would result in $110 in the account at the end of the year. But if you compound it more than once a year, it means it's going to add in the interest, and then it's going to keep going, and then it's going to keep adding it in. So we do need to know what certain words mean. So if they use the word quarterly, think about it. How many times per year do you think that that is? All right, and we're going to get 4. When it asks you to compound it semi-annually, or they might use the word biannually, what that's saying is twice per year. Finally, daily, we all know what daily means. It means every day. Hopefully, we know how many days are in a year. And for daily, you would want to use 365. I do understand that in a leap year, we have another day, but that is not the usual situation. And finally, monthly. And again, how many months in the year? That would be 12. So as long as you kind of know these words, it's not going to be that difficult to put in. But you do want to remember to use these parentheses, all right? And if you don't have what's called pretty print on your calculator, and that means that when you go to raise it to an exponent and you press that magical little caret button that looks like this little caret button, if this doesn't disappear, then you need to be very careful with this NT. You're going to either need to put a set of parentheses around it, or you're going to need to multiply it out to find out what that number is. Here's an example of what I mean by the pretty print. If you had to plug in 1 plus perhaps a rate of 3%, so that would be 0.03, think of it as cents, over, we're going to say the number of compoundings per year is quarterly. So I'm going to put it over 4, and then I'm supposed to raise it to the NT. When you press that caret button, if this happens and it gives you that little spot, you're golden. You could hit 4 times per year for N times, let's say, 3 years. You could do that and it would accept it. But if yours doesn't do that, if when you hit the button it gives you this symbol, whoops, it won't let me do this in math type. It's going to have a meltdown. If you do that, you would want to put a parentheses around the 3 times 4, or you would just want to raise it to 12 so that it already knows what to do. So just be very mindful of what kind of a calculator you have. One last thing. It is about what happens if interest is compounded continuously. That sounds like you would make a bajillion dollars, but in actuality, you'll see it only makes a little bit more. But if you compound something continuously, we're going to need to use a function that uses the irrational number e. And e is a very, very special button. So e can be found as the inverse to the ln button in the first column of your calculator. Check out your calculator. If you look down this first column, you'll see log, which we're familiar with, and the 10 to the x, and then you'll see ln. And above it, you can't really see on this picture, but it will have an e squared. E is the inverse of all natural logs. So back to this. It's the first button in the first column. So ln, like you just heard me say, stands for natural log. Now, it sounds crazy, but it's because if you say natural logarithm in a language like Spanish or French, I want you to think about where the adjective goes when you're describing a noun. You would say it backwards. You would say like logarithm natural is how they would say it, and that's why it's ln. Now, a equals pe to the rt, pert. It's going to be all the same stuff. You're going to press the E button. It's going to give you a little parentheses. R is your rate. Remember to write it as a decimal. And T is time. And everything is going to just work out great. So good luck with this. It's going to be due on Tuesday, and it'll be nice to have those extra points.